62 million people have seen the 30-second clip. Less than 4% have seen the 4 minutes that came before it. The 4 minutes that explain why Fox News cut away and then cut back and then cut away again. Robert De Niro walked onto that set and ended the conversation in a single move. Not the one most people remember, not the words, the stillness that preceded them. 4 seconds of complete, unreadable, occupying stillness was the moment Fox News director first reached for the cut switch and then pulled his hand back. That hesitation is the part nobody has discussed. That hesitation is the story. The studio was a 2-chair remote format. Fox News daytime desk, satellite feed from New York. The segment had been booked as a brief commentary. De Niro's recent appearances at the No Kings protests, his MSNBC remarks, and the White House's response. Standard opposition framing, the kind of segment that exists to produce a usable clip and a counter-narrative. The host had her talking points. The lower thirds were already written. The segment was scheduled for 4 minutes and 15 seconds. It ran 6 minutes and 41 seconds. Nobody planned that. The air in a remote broadcast setup has a particular flatness. No audience, no ambient energy, just 2 chairs and the specific silence of a room that exists only to produce a signal. De Niro sat in his chair with his jacket buttoned. He has a way of sitting that takes up no excess space. Not deliberately small, but contained in the manner of a man who has spent 60 years deciding exactly which dimensions he occupies and which ones he doesn't. He looked at the camera, not at the host's face in the monitor, at the camera itself, at the lens, at the thing behind the lens. The host opened with the standard framing, De Niro's No Kings speech, the language used, and the characterization of the president as someone who needed to be stopped. She asked whether a celebrity had any standing to use that kind of language about a sitting president. De Niro said yes. She asked whether he understood that millions of Americans found that language disrespectful. De Niro said, "Tell me which words specifically." The question stopped her, not because it was hostile, because it was precise. She had expected a defense. He had asked for an itemized list. She named the phrase from the MSNBC appearance, the F-bomb, the reference to the administration's goons. De Niro nodded once. Then he said he stood by both. He said standing by something you've said is not the same as being unable to defend it. He said there was a difference between impolite language and inaccurate language. He asked which category she believed his words fell into. She said, impolite. He said, then we agree on the facts. Something shifted in the segment at that point. Not visibly, not dramatically, but measurably. The host's cadence, which had been carrying the rhythm of someone managing a pre-planned exchange, changed by half a beat. She moved to Trump's response, the social media posts calling De Niro low IQ and punch drunk, the long documented back and forth that had been running since the Tony Awards in 2018. She framed it as a mutual feud, equal sides, calibrated combat between 2 men who had chosen conflict. De Niro let her finish. Then he said, I want to show you something. He reached into the left interior pocket of his jacket. Slow. No drama in the movement. The specific absence of drama that registers differently from its presence. He placed a folded sheet on the edge of his chair's armrest. Single page. He did not unfold it. He looked at the host. He said, the president has called me stupid, punch-drunk, low IQ, and senile in 27 separate public statements since 2018. He said he had counted them. He said the word counted the way a forensic accountant says it, not proudly, but factually, as the correct verb for the action performed. He said that in each of those 27 statements, the president had made no factual claim about him, not one. Every statement had been a personal descriptor, not a refutation, not a rebuttal, a descriptor. He asked the host to identify, from any of those 27 statements, one piece of factual counter-evidence to anything De Niro had said publicly about the administration. She said she didn't have them in front of her. He said, I do. He unfolded the page. A printed list, 27 entries, date, platform, direct quote, a single column on the right side labeled factual claim, blank on every line. He did not read it aloud. He held it at an angle that the camera could see clearly and let the camera do the work. The director in the Fox control room reached for the cut switch again. He held for 3 seconds, then 4. The segment stayed live. The host said the president had a right to respond to personal attacks. De Niro said, absolutely. He said a response is a response. He said 27 personal descriptors across 8 years are a pattern. He said a pattern is architecture. He said, that's not defense, that's a building. You build it the same way every time because the same way is the only way that works. He said the word once, flatly, as the correct technical term. and then said it again 14 seconds later when he held the list up one more time and said, "This is the architecture of someone who has no other tool available." He didn't say it with contempt. He said it the way a structural engineer describes a load-bearing wall, as a fact about how a thing is built. The host's jaw was set. Her hands were flat on her desk. She said the comparison was unfair. She said the president operated in a different context, under different pressures, with different constraints. De Niro said, "Which constraints prevent a factual response?" The question sat in the studio air for 3 seconds. The satellite delay added a beat. The host's eyes moved to her notes. Her breathing was visible on camera. Not ragged, not panicked, but located somewhere between the composure she had arrived with and the composure required for a question she hadn't prepared for. She tried a pivot. She moved to De Niro's Tony's speech. The explicit language, the bleeped broadcast, the standing ovation. She said the language had alienated people who might otherwise have agreed with his position. De Niro said, "Name one policy that changed because of the language I used." Silence. He said, "I'll wait." A woman in the control room later said it was the longest 4 seconds of her career. Not because they were dramatic, because the director's hand was still above the cut switch, and the answer to the question was not coming, and the camera was running, and every person in that room knew simultaneously that none of those facts were going to change before the 4 seconds ended. The host said, "That's not the point." De Niro said, "Then what is?" His voice had not risen, it had not sharpened, it had gone in the opposite direction, lower, slower, cleaner, the way a signal gets cleaner when you remove interference. He was not performing conviction, he was operating from it, the way Taxi Driver is not a performance of intensity, but intensity that happens to be on film. The difference is visible, it is not teachable. The camera knows it, on contact. His hands were still, his posture was still, his eyes were on the host with the total, undisplaced attention of a man who is asking questions because he genuinely wants to know the answers and has already accepted that the answers may not come. Trump's voice had called him punch-drunk 8 years ago. It had called him low IQ in 15 separate posts. It had said his career was over, that his movies didn't matter, that he was a relic of a Hollywood that had lost its meaning. None of those statements were on the list because they were about De Niro. They were about the threat De Niro represented. Not the actor, but the specific quality of attention he brought into a room. The quality that asks, which word specifically? The quality that counts to 27. The quality that holds a list up to a camera and lets the blank column in the right margin say the thing that no statement, however loud, however capitalized, had ever been able to say back. The director cut at 6 minutes and 41 seconds. 2 seconds after De Niro's last question. Not because the segment had ended, it hadn't, but because continuing required either an answer or an acknowledgement that the answer wasn't coming. The cut was itself an answer. 31 million people saw the moment the feed went to commercial. 14 million of them rewound it immediately. They weren't looking for the words. They were looking at the host's face in the 2 seconds before the cut, the specific quality of stillness of a face in the process of recognizing that the room it is in has changed shape and that the shape it has changed into does not contain an exit it had planned for. The clip ran everywhere that night, not the full 6 minutes and 41 seconds. The last 4, from the moment De Niro placed the folded page on the armrest to the cut. Fox News ran a counter segment at 9 p.m. describing the appearance as a partisan ambush. The counter segment was viewed 300,000 times. The clip was viewed 31 million. Trump posted twice before midnight. Both posts used the word punchy. Both were screenshotted beside the blank right-hand column of De Niro's list, without caption or annotation. The juxtaposition did not require either. Forums pulled every Trump statement about De Niro from 2018 forward and ran them in sequence. 27 entries, not one factual counterclaim in the lot. The list that De Niro had compiled and held up to a Fox News camera was not an accusation. It was an inventory. A count of what was present and what was absent. What was absent was the architecture of a man who could answer a question about his own words. What was present was 27 ways of not doing so. The room Fox News couldn't cut away from fast enough was not a studio. It was the inside of an argument that had been running for 8 years and had, in 6 minutes and 41 seconds, arrived at its natural conclusion. Not a bang, a blank column, right justified, running the full length of the page. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The next confrontation is already building. And once you see what's coming, you'll understand why silence is always louder than power.